Thank you. Thank you, David. Thank you all for the warm welcome, and a huge thank you on behalf of QS and myself to Prime for enabling us to be able to speak and partner with you at this year's conference. It's a pleasure to be here. The word rankings did come up, and I want to thank the American University of Cairo. You'll be pleased to hear I'm not going to be talking too much about rankings, or at least I think you may be pleased I won't talk a lot about rankings. It will come into part of the data. But just to frame a little bit around my time, I've been with QS for 21 years. So I'm an old timer. I'm not going to say I'm old, I'm just an old timer at QS. But I've seen a huge amount of change. When I joined QS, I was number 49. I'm now 49 of 825 people. So I've seen a huge amount of change in our organization. And our organization has grown as we've seen global higher education grow. We've grown with the system, with the sector, as the sector has prospered. Obviously, I'm sure you're all feeling it as well, but there are headwinds that have been mentioned already today that we've all witnessed, and QS is not immune to those headwinds. But part of what we've been doing as an organization is moving more into becoming a data hub. Yes, we collect rankings data, but we're doing far more than that now. And we're the only ranking, I'm pretty proud to say, I wasn't going to mention the ranking word too much, and here I go, but how we now factor in skills and employability into our metrics. It's incredibly important to us at QS, and I'm going to try and click through these slides. Bear with me. I may need my glasses. Okay. So the reason this is important, and the session that I wanted to work on today in the data, was really looking at this from an African continental perspective, but we do have some other data that we will pepper into this presentation. But I thought it was really important that I share with you, for those that are not aware, and I know many of you will be very aware of QS and working very closely with our president and founder, Nunzio Quacquarelli. But in essence, our mission statement is empowering motivated people around the world to fulfill their potential by fostering international mobility, educational achievement, and career development. That has held steady since I joined QS 21 years ago. So I'm really proud that that's still at the core and heart of our values. Yes, we are a commercial organization, but we do have a lot of values, and we do aim to put back into the sector. So just to give you some touch points here, I normally move around the stage, but I'm afraid I'm going to stay here today because I need to actually read my notes. So in essence, why QS? What do we do different? So as I mentioned, we're over 800 staff in over 40 countries around the world. We support 75,000 students to enroll at our partner institutions each year. We believe, and I think we can say, that we're the #1 global market leader for student insights and guidance, and that's coming from Google Trends. We assess nearly 8,500 institutions during the process of our global rankings. And as you know, our rankings don't just sit with the World University Rankings. We do rankings dedicated to your part of the sector. Beyond that, we do rankings on a regional premise as well, and over 52 individual subjects. Our vision is to empower 1 billion learners. We didn't put a timeline on that, but I'll let you know when we make it. So I'm conscious of time as well, because I believe that we're a little bit behind, and I'm holding you back from coffee. So I'm going to try and whiz through some of this early stuff. But in essence, I just wanted to really get to the ground of where we sit, in the pillars that we really focus on as an organization. Because many of you will know us either rankings, or you'll know us for student recruitment. But student recruitment is one of those pillars for sure. Employability and skills is a growing large area of what QS is doing now. And collecting data points in this space is incredibly important. And I'm going to come on to that a little bit more later on. Institutional performance, and then higher ed innovation. So how do we achieve this? So as I mentioned, we got 79 million individuals looking at our website on an annual basis. That's on topuniversities.com. Whether we like them or not, a lot of that traffic is driven by the rankings. That's the home of the QS rankings. We run over 270 student recruitment events in 59 countries each year. And we actually collect, and this is really important as we move into the space of employability and skills and looking at the skills gap analysis that QS is undertaking. We are now scraping over 800 million job postings per year. We're looking at what the labor market is actually asking for. What are the skills that those jobs are looking for? Then we're working with partner institutions to actually really understand what is going on with the curricula. Is the curricula meeting the need of the market when those graduates go out to the workplace? So this is very much at the forefront of where QS is investing much of its resource now into the skills and workspace. And as I mentioned, we've got 800 higher education experts in over 40 countries around the world. I'm touching again a bit repetitive, but as I mentioned, we do look within the QS World University Rankings lens. We do start that journey with 8,500 institutions, so we are collecting an enormous amount of data from institutions like yourselves on an annual basis. We run one of the largest international student surveys, so we're looking at student sentiment, and that student sentiment journey takes us in the last 5 years to nearly 550,000 respondents. When we look at our employer reputation and our academic reputation survey, we get 120,000 survey responses from employers in the last 5 years and 150,000 from academia in the same period. We're increasingly working with governments, and as many of you may be aware, we released this past week the QS World Future Skills Index. It's still very much in its early phase of development, and it will evolve over time, and I would welcome input and contact with each of you if you have any ideas how we can improve the metric that we're publishing. But this is becoming increasingly important to governments around the world, and we're now working with over 20 governments on that World Future Skills Index, on how they're going to actually future-proof their economies to ensure that the labor market and the skills that are in place in that labor market are going to be the skills of the future. And as been mentioned already today, and this comes out often in our data, things are moving so fast now with AI. And it's a creation that we're now working on is looking at how we can create and work with institutions with a responsible AI framework, working with partner institutions. But I'll come on to that a little bit later. So, education in 2030. What we have now done is created the Holland IQ by QS platform. So this is an incredibly powerful database that we are now organized, running, and embedding lots of proprietary QS data, as well as third-party data as well, where we have little bits of our DNA missing in that data. So what we're looking at here, and I can run this data pretty much for any region in the world. I recently presented something similar in Shenzhen, where we were looking at the Chinese landscape. But today we have focused, and I'm pleased to be doing this, with an Africa lens. So what are the defining features of the international recruitment landscape? So there's lots we're going to be looking at with institutional performance, student recruitment, skills and workforce, and hopefully, if I get time and don't get told I need to quieten down, innovation and technology. So what we're looking at here is some data that's telling us, looking really at the population and the age of the population across the continent. And as we can see, the forecast up until around 2050 is huge growth. But we can see that 300 million 0 to 19-year-olds will drop quite significantly within 75 years to about 125 million individuals. So as the population shrinks, the question is, how do we create growth within the continent? Educating the group to be work-ready and to support growth and to expand and grow those economies will be paramount. And obviously ensuring that as that peak comes, that there is capacity to educate that group. And obviously, as we've seen, and we're going to talk about some of the data here when we look at the outbound student flows from the continent, this is something also very much for consideration. So, now we're looking at the demand for tertiary education. And we can see that there is going to be a peak. That peak will come, and that growth will continue all the way through to 2100. But initially, what we're looking at here is how that growth is going to impact the local institutions here across the continent, and ensuring that we've got the capacity to actually educate the demand. So that we're saying by the end of this century, 670 million individuals across the continent will have achieved a tertiary education qualification. Harnessing that talent is going to be essential. So what this slide is now depicting, and we're looking at some countries, obviously based on population, as well as regions, but we can see the growth in GDP that is predicted to come for the African continent will grow, and it will actually take over in front of China by 2031. Now, these are models that are run through our HolonIQ platform, so obviously these are predictions, there's no guarantees, but all the indication, the data is implying to us that the GDP will grow at that rate, which will actually give Africa a global share of GDP of just below 6%. Now, my colleagues, we did some work on the data. I'm not going to take the credit for all of this. I'm pretty rubbish when it comes to PowerPoint. Even when it comes to Claude, I'm still pretty rubbish at it. But my colleagues have pulled some really interesting data here. So when we're looking at some of the data points here from the QS Global Economic Outlook, we can see our host nation here, Egypt, is currently positioned at 38. And that is still looking to climb by 2050 to the place of 35th. But Nigeria will skyrocket. From its position in 2030 of 47, the prediction is that Nigeria will actually grow and move up into the 30th position. Ethiopia will see some huge gains as well, and obviously South Africa there will maintain its position just slightly below Egypt with 37th in the world. This is where things get a little bit interesting, and I'm not going to dwell too much on these, but some of the predictions that our data is telling us are the 5 possible scenarios for education and how education will be delivered. Personally, I believe we're going to come somewhere in the middle of this. I think if we go to the very bottom, we're looking at the robo-revolution. Oh, I've got a couple of minutes, so I'm going to whiz past this slide. Okay, sorry. I was told 30, I'm sorry. Okay, so I'm going to move quite quickly because I want to sort of focus on some of the metrics here specifically about Africa. So in essence, what we're looking at here is there are now 48 African universities in the latest edition of the QS World University Rankings, That's up from 32 only 5 years ago. So we are seeing gains in our metrics that Africa is showing its hand when it comes to the region. However, it is important to say that other emerging regions like the Middle East, South Asia, and Southeast Asia will be putting pressure on the African institutions' performance as well. But Africa is very well represented in many of our subject rankings. And I'm pleased to say that we have here in the life sciences area, we've got some real strong performance, particularly in medicine, agriculture, chemistry, and computer science are coming out top for the region. But what we see in lots of our data is a misalignment between that ability to create and perform in those areas, but actually then how that's not actually feeding into the reputation surveys the QS does. So there is some work to do there to actually harness that amazing movement that we've seen from the continental perspective. Just wanted to frame that from a student perspective. I know we talk QS is everything about international students, but from our QS International Student Survey of last year, we can see here where the importance of reputation from an institution is. 43% cite reputation is important when they're choosing a course, but that jumps to 53% when they are talking about a university. And then you can see on the right those countries. I will be sharing the slides, so I'm going to move fast before I get another flag. Just wanted to highlight here, and I don't have do I have one? Yes, I do. So, no, maybe I don't. Okay, so in the bottom quartile, what this is really looking at here is below the line. The bottom quartile to the right is where we can see institutions that have actually got a high reputation, but they've actually got low recruitment, and I'm talking international recruitment. So that may be an actual deliberate exercise, but if it isn't, that's where there's some opportunity there for actually raising an institution's brand, its reputation output, and the ability then to attract international student talent. So that comes in both in the employer and the academic reputation survey. But Africa does deliver some of the strongest employment outcomes, and this is what has literally just come from the latest world rankings. As I mentioned, we're moving more increasingly, putting more weighting on employers. Am I out of time? Okay. I'm out of time. Okay, well, I'm sorry about that, ladies and gentlemen. I've got about another 20 slides to give you. I will be running a session tomorrow specifically on the Future World Skills Index, so I'm not trying to big my own session up, but I will be running that there. This data, and we are looking to work closely with institutions from within this organization. We want to partner with universities. Yes, we are commercial, but we do have a lot of insight to share, and that insight is pretty powerful. So thank you very much. Sorry I didn't get to finish. Thank you.